front-facing on the web yet, and I'm really excited to introduce Shane Parreco, who is going to be talking about Aktïga. But before we get started, I want to invite Tony from Coffee Curious. Can we all give her a round of applause?
Good morning. I hope you're enjoying your coffee.
Yeah.
I just want to let you guys know that there's some classes that you might be interested in. We have latte art classes, we have home barista classes, and we have a special guest trainer who's a specialty coffee association trainer coming in from Austin, Texas, the third week in November. And we're going to do an intro to cupping with several little rows. And we're also going to be doing a blind coffee flight tasting beta test in this room so that we can work out doing corporate events for 20, 40, 60 people and offer that to the corporate people who come in. And so it's on Eventbrite, November 19th at 2 o'clock if you'd like to come in and be experimented on and drink some coffee. But please do check out the Coffee Curious Workshop's website so that you can come learn more about coffee and have a lot of fun. Thank you.
And it's also a good thing to do as family comes into town over the holidays. Sometimes you just got to eat up a couple hours. Keep people busy. All right, big thanks to our organizers. I'm Erica Gifford of Hatch Co-working. We have Andy Graham of Big C, Beverly Durango of Inside Edge Consulting, Sean Como of Hatchworks, Amanda Moses of Moses Connects, Thomas Sekele, Fundable Ready, and Annie Lewis with EXP Realty. Format, so silence your phones. And also, raise your hand for any questions, wait for a mic because we are recording and it will not pick up questions or responses without a microphone. All right, without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the stage Shane Parreco.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming. My name is Shane Parreco. I'm the CEO and founder of Aktïga, and I'm going to talk with you guys about I guess my team is here, our take on the future of what we see the spatial medium kind of opening doors to, and how we're going to kind of get there. At least that's our hope. So really what we're talking about is building spatial applications and immersive experiences. So virtual reality, augmented reality, extended reality. With Apple joining the fray next year with their Vision Pro headset, feels like they've really brought the word spatial into the conversation. And it feels to us like that actually makes a lot of sense and helps wrap a little bit more common language around the conversation. It makes it easier for us to talk about when we're talking about virtual reality and augmented reality and video game engines. It seems like a lot of people gloss over it. It's like, what are we talking about here, really? So, some of the things that we've learned over these past 6 months or so is that virtual reality development is really challenging. It's great, but video game engines are the way. They're the means in which the vast majority of virtual reality content is built. So we're thinking the Unreal Engine, Unity, those kind of software engines that are primarily used to build video games. And video games are primarily the products that people are building with these tools. They're not easy to use. They're complicated. They require like expensive developer talent, people who are familiar with these things, how to use them, and how to use them specifically to build immersive content, virtual reality content, which is not really what they were intended to do. And then you add in that licenses and fees, and it just sort of bottlenecks the process. Everything takes longer, everything costs more money, more challenging to build some sort of spatial or immersive experience. Then when you finish building your experience, you have to figure out a way to distribute. The distribution model is significantly bottlenecked with app stores. So we've got app store marketplaces. So you have to have a native application that you have to submit for review. It takes a long time to get that finished product reviewed and published. And then you have to figure out how to work within that ecosystem to promote your product, to say, hey, here's this thing, go download it onto your headset and use it. It's great. But again, that's challenging because it's only available to those headset users. And that's really the last big challenge is we're talking about a limited user base. There's only so many virtual reality headsets out there in the world right now. And the vast majority of virtual reality content is only accessible in the headset. There's no other way to see or interact with that experience. And that feels to us like a real problem. So, is there another way? We feel like there has to be, and that's really what we've discovered, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. In 2010, Ethan Marcotte, for those designers in the room, he wrote an article about responsive web design and kicked off this whole debate about web design and development and whether or not it made sense to have one experience or one website that would respond to the device. So one website that's like, it's the same website on your desktop or your tablet or your phone, and just the content responds. It's kind of like Bruce Lee's comment, be like water, my friend. So your content is like water, and your device is the container. Whatever device is displaying that content, the content then reacts accordingly. So that got us thinking. My team is primarily former designers, now developers, so we talk a lot about design. We meet every week and talk about design, the work that we're doing with design. And it got us thinking, what about building virtual reality content on the web? And we didn't necessarily think at first that it was very doable, and these are some of the things that we found. That yes, it actually can be done. You can build virtual reality and immersive content and deliver it on the web. We have to work within some limitations, but it does work, and it's quite surprising how well it works. And then lastly, we're building these things with common coded frameworks. We're talking about JavaScript and React, and these are two of the largest and most common used languages and frameworks out there in the development community. So that sort of took the conversation one additional step. What about building immersive experiences as responsive web designs? What would we even call that? How could we take some sort of content and make it work immersively or spatially? So taking this concept of extended reality, virtual reality, augmented reality, combining it with responsive web design, and what we get is extended responsive web design. So that's what we're talking about today. I've got some postcards up here. If you guys didn't get one, please feel free to take one. We've got these really cool pins that our designer designed that everybody loves. Take it home, put it on something, and then you'll see that really cool looking X. It's funny, when our designer was like, now that's how you design an X. Right? It's pretty handsome. So we're just going to talk a little bit about the basics here. I don't want to get too technical and into the weeds. Just going to kind of go over the gist so that everyone kind of understands, and then I'm certain there's going to be lots of questions, which I'm happy to answer. First and foremost, we're talking about creating compatibility across all devices. So creating one set of content that is responsive to the device that you're viewing that content on, including spatial devices. Virtual reality headsets, augmented reality glasses, Apple's headset, all of the other headsets that have been announced that I'm sure we're going to see over the next couple of years. But creating something that is accessible from any device. That's really our first and foremost piece. Second piece is all content needs to have two states. So we can write code that accommodates this. We've got a two-dimensional version, sort of our typical, sections and buttons and text and headers and all those things. And then we also have buttons that extrude themselves and become objects and become physical things in a virtual space. Ultimately, what our intention is to enable the user, regardless of their device, to toggle between 2 dimensions and 3 dimensions with the flip of a switch, which for us is pretty magical. And we're talking about 2D and 3D, we're talking about like a login, we're talking about your homepage, we're talking about like a products or an e-commerce environment on the web. These are all pretty standard 2-dimensional web things. Now we have to think about those from the 3rd dimension. What would a login look like? Would it look like a front door? Or would it look like an alleyway? How would you get into this spatial experience? Is your home page now your lobby or a lounge or your sort of entryway or breezeway? What does it look like? What do you want to be on the walls? And then your products. To me, that's one of the most exciting pieces, is creating a virtual shopping experience. Someone can walk through a virtual store, pick up virtual objects, and say, ooh, does that fit me? Yeah, it does. Put that in my virtual cart, check out. With the immersive world, we have more engagement devices and tools. We can animate things in a more meaningful way. We have haptic buzzers and controllers. We can add audio. Spatial audio adds a lot to the experience. When you click a button, you actually hear something go. It's kind of like when you click something on your keyboard. That tactile haptic response it's part of why the immersive space is so impactful, because it's immersive. Because when you're there, you basically forget about the real world, and you're like, ooh, what is this in front of me? I just touched this button and it went, and that was really amazing. At least that's the stuff that we nerd out. At the end of the day, content is still king. Your content has to be the most important piece of what you're delivering. All the different content types that we're familiar with. We're talking about text, we're talking about images, we're talking about video. Now we're talking about audio. Audio is not a typical part of like a standard 2-dimensional web experience, but in the 3-dimensional world, it's really important. There's a reason why sound design is such an important piece of production for movies and for shows. Now we're talking about 3D models. What objects? How do we design them? How would I get this pumpkin or this squash into space? I'd have to figure out how to design and build this and place it virtually in the room. But that's still just another piece of content. And then lastly, we're talking about creating killer experiences. A lot of folks that we talk to about what we're doing, the question always comes up, what's the killer app for VR? What's the killer app for what you're talking about? And we feel like there's lots of killer experiences and killer applications for what could be done. At the end of the day, my background with my other company, Online Training Concepts, I'm really interested in the immersive learning world and simulation training, making experiential content that people can learn from and interact with in that virtual, safe environment. There's a lot of really great research that reinforces how quickly and efficiently people learn in VR. On average, it's 4 times faster, and they retain twice as much information, and that's regardless of subject matter. It's not just pull this lever, plug this thing in, okay, I got it. It's like, we're talking about management, we're talking about soft skills, anything that a person needs to learn and absorb is new information. And people have a limit, we all know, like, oh my gosh, my brain is full, don't tell me anymore, I have to leave this room. Or if you're sitting through like a 3-hour lecture, you're like, why am I here? What is going on? I lost it like 2 hours ago, right? And at the end of the day, when you can deliver that content in an interactive, simulated environment, people learn more of it and they walk away with more. And you don't have to spend as much time because they're learning faster. All really exciting stuff. In terms of killer applications, obviously I feel passionately about education, but we're talking about therapy. One of the products that we build is an EMDR therapy for virtual reality on the web platform. It's in beta, we're testing it with therapists currently. We're talking about 3D exhibits, had a great conversation with Andy at Big C recently. All of the potential things that museums could do virtually, immersively, accessibly, all of these These are all really important things for the museum world. E-commerce, networking, collaboration, architectural visualization, data visualization, all of these things are compelling use cases for what we're talking about. The spatial computing world is coming, and all of these things are going to have an important place there. And so, ultimately, the question is, does XRWD matter? And ultimately, what we're trying to say is, it's kind of up to everyone to decide for themselves. To us, it matters because we see these challenges with building and developing immersive content, spatial content, virtual reality experiences. It does matter to us because we feel like accessible spatial content on any device, to be able to look around a virtual room on your phone, means that more people are going to see that room. More people are going to interact with your content. The experience of toggling, flipping that switch, and toggling from looking at a virtual website and being like, ooh, let me flip this button, and then just like that, you're magically transported into another environment. That's pretty awesome. It very much is like a Dorothy and Oz, a moment of magic. It's that wow factor. That's part of what keeps us up at night. And then the last piece that we feel like why this matters is that this process and this approach is unburdened by the time and the cost associated with typical production processes for virtual reality content. We're not using a video game engine. We don't have to pay a license. We don't have to pay a runtime fee. We don't have to produce a native application. We don't have to submit that application to an app store. And then we don't have to figure out how to get people to download that app. And that's the only way they can see it or experience it. We can build this stuff. We can put it on a website. We can say, here's the website, go there on any device. And there you have it. They don't have to download anything. They can click and toggle right into 3 dimensions and have access to that spatial content. It's pretty exciting. So that's Aktïga, that's us, XRWD. We are using XRWD to build accessible spatial experiences on the web. That's our whole thing. Our ask today is for developers and designers. We wrote a white paper. We've published it at xrwd.org. We've got these postcards with the pins and all that. We want to talk with you. We want to hear your feedback. We want to keep this conversation going about what we're doing and why we feel like it's important. And for everyone else who's not a developer or designer, you see spatial as an important part of our computing future, then let's chat. If there's a compelling way to bring something that you're working on or that your company is working on to the spatial immersive space, we want to hear about it. We want to talk about it. We want to figure out how to work with you. That's pretty much it. This QR code will take you to xrwd.org to read the paper. But we're happy to have the conversations and hear feedback and take questions. And there you go, Aktïga and XRWD. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane.
Sure.
All right, we're going to take questions. First question,
Hey, so great presentation. I'm curious if you've explored, how much you've explored the idea of co-working yet, and whether that's something on your horizon. I know it's somewhat on the VR horizon, but I'm curious if that's on the horizon for Aktïga.
Yeah, that's a great question. We definitely have a long list of things that we'd like to do. Co-working and collaboration and productivity stay near the top of that list, and how to enable that easy presence of collaborating remotely. You know, at the end of the day, we're talking about how different the world is now with remote work and how employers are trying desperately to get people to return to office. It even has an acronym now, which seems kind of crazy. The RTO movement. It's like, come on, really? That's not a thing. People want to work at home. Let them work at home. I mean, I don't understand why everybody's all up in arms about it. I think it's kind of crazy. But yes, Will, to your point, I think that we're seeing there's some really exciting technology. There's companies out there that are experimenting with large amounts of cohabitated virtual space. There used to be some pretty severe limitations on multiple users in one virtual environment. And there's some new technology that's really exciting that could scale up to the tens of thousands of people all in the same virtual space. So I think those are the kinds of things that when we see, and as we're talking about them, we're like, oh, that's compelling. That really falls in line with this whole idea of collaboration. And how can we get more people to share virtual space? So great question, thank you. Any other questions? Eli, the computer guy. Oh boy, here we go.
So with this, I was just kind of reading your website. So is this a framework or design philosophy? And either way, how do you expect to get buy-in in the tech community, especially being up here in a mountain town away from San Francisco?
Great question. So ultimately, it's kind of both. It's a philosophy for designers to think about. That's part of the reason why we started sharing this with the design community through AIGA. I serve on the board of AIGA. We went up to the New York conference a couple weeks ago and presented about XRWD because we want designers to think about this. We want designers to have the conversations with their clients to say, hey, I know we're designing your new logo, but what would it look like as a three-dimensional object? What would your website look like as a spatial experience? What's this going to look like on a spatial device? That part of the process, that early engagement from the designer's perspective feels really important to us. I'm a big fan of design being your source of truth, and everything revolves out from the design. Maybe that's just my own background with creativity and being a musician. But as for the second part of the question, our hope is that we are building like a component library. We're starting to see those pieces come together so that we're having a framework so that we can say, okay, here's your XRWD component library. This is how you can use this structure to build two-dimensional content that also has a three-dimensional, like, related sibling, in terms of code. So yes, that, to answer your question, we do see it becoming a framework or a library and evolving into a tool. Our hope is to build a tool so that people can build their own immersive content on the web. Think of it as kind of like a Canva for VR on the web. Anybody could build stuff and be like, okay, here's my room, check it out. Or an architect could be like, here's your new house, check it out. Put on the headset and walk around. And then the last piece, how to survive here in the mountains, the tiny town, and so far from the halls of Silicon Valley. That's a great question, and we are definitely figuring it out as we go. So I think, from my perspective, I personally have a lot of opinions about the venture capital world and how very broken that system is. But at the end of the day, with how much emphasis has been placed on remote, it feels like it's kind of broken some of those barriers. I'm actually having a conversation tomorrow with an investor from Seattle who's interested in what we're talking about. So it feels like, and this guy lives in Asheville, so I feel like Asheville's, obviously we know Asheville's a little bit of a bubble. But at the same time, there's a lot of people moving here. I've met some really talented developers and some really, really exciting people that are moving here because they see what we see. I've been in the area for over 20 years. I love it here. There's a reason why I haven't left. When it rains and you can see water and you can be like, okay, I know I'm drinking clean water. These are important things that other people are starting to realize are important, and they're coming here, they're flocking here. So to me, access and having the ability to communicate with people outside of this area, I feel like those barriers are very much, they're breaking down, and it's getting easier. So my hope is that we become one of the tech, folks in town, and that we start to attract more people that want to be involved in tech in Asheville. I think there's a huge opportunity for the tech community in Asheville to grow, and we very much want to be part of that.
Hey Shane,
Hey, Brett.
thanks for the presentation.
Sure.
It's good to see it come along.
Thanks
I
for
am
being here.
You got it. I'm curious about business model.
Yeah.
Right, so you've got, there's a whole smattering of different industries and different products that sounds like you've built some, you could build others. And if I think about the correlation between web design and businesses on the web, I go pay somebody to build my website, that's one way commerce happens. I build a shopping site. That's another way commerce happens on the web. What are you thinking in terms of business model for Aktïga?
It's a great question. Very top of mind too, so I appreciate that. I'm working through an incubator program in Winston-Salem once it starts, and that's really what we're talking about right now is do we go for equity dollars, do we hunt for the venture capital folks, or do we do projects, and do we engage with clients, and do we prove that there's a market for what we're talking about? And that's pretty much where we've landed. And so the business model for us right now is finding designers, finding developers who potentially have clients, finding marketing agencies that have clients that might be interested in something like this. Because conceptually, it's all easy to kind of dream up, but at the end of the day, it's the actual building of the thing. And that's where we feel like we have a real advantage. XRWD makes it possible for us to build immersive content at a fraction of the cost and in a fraction of the time that it typically takes a development team to build. I was just talking with someone recently about a virtual reality app that he was shopping for a development company to build for him, and he was struggling to find any bids under $1 million. He was like, I found this company in India that could do it for $850. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. And when I looked at the project, I was like, we could do this for maybe $300K at the most, and that's like giving us a huge runway. So I think those are the conversations that I'm the most excited about, is what our competitive advantage is as a development team and as a development-focused house. Like, we're gonna build stuff for other people to prove that it's doable and to prove that there's a real market for this and that we can get traction in that market. So that's really the business model that we're chasing right now, is let's find some projects, let's generate some revenue, let's prove that this thing works. Oh, Jeffrey.
Quick question for you. I'm trying to understand the structure and entities and interplay.
Okay.
So it looks like xrwd.org
Correct.
is a nonprofit.
No, it's just a thing. It's just a website for the white paper. It's literally just the white paper.
So the white paper
Yep.
is your Ethan Marcotte RWD moment,
Yes.
right? So that's what you and the team, and have you guys trademarked it? Is it yours, you own?
Correct.
XRWD.
Trademark is currently pending, applications already submitted.
Awesome. So that is your planting the flag. This is the future of technology, and if that's where you want to go, check it out. We have a development agency called Aktïga. That's a for-profit.
There you go.
That's how it all works together.
Yes, sir.
Got it.
So XRWD is more the concept and the paper that enables us to claim some thought leadership, to say, I want to go, like, I'm happy to go and say, hey, I'll go talk about this stuff. Let me go present. I'm applying to South by Southwest. I'm going to apply to as many different things as I can find, all the different design, development, UI, UX conferences and events. Say, hey, let's get the conversation started about what XRWD is and how it's going to impact the spatial media moving forward.
Has anyone done that as a nonprofit, as opposed to, what was Ethan Marcotte doing before RWD?
He was just a web designer, and he just wrote the blog, and he was like, this is what I think, and then it sparked this debate for a couple of years. People were like, no, we don't need one thing, we need three things. We need to build specific websites just for phones.
Right.
And then after a couple of years, everybody was like, no, actually, that's stupid, let's just build one thing.
So that's why you're trying on conferences and stages
Yes.
to have your healthy debates.
Yes, sir.
Cool. That's great.
Thanks.
Hello, good morning.
Hi.
I'm interested to know the decision to not be on the App Store, like one of those marketplace platforms. So you mentioned Canva, which I use heavily. Obviously they're an app. And so my question and I guess concern is how will you increase awareness and adoption of being on a main platform like that? What are some other strategies that you guys have in mind aside from going to conferences, speaking at the big guys like South by Southwest? Like how do you ramp up that user and client acquisition?
That's a great question. So one thing that we always have to have a conversation with folks about is understanding what an application is, what a web application is, and what a native application is. So Canva is a great example. That's a web application. That's something that people can access through the browser. So you don't have to download the app. You can. It's kind of like Figma. You can just go to the browser, log into your Figma account, and start designing. You can go to canva.com, log into your account, start designing. You don't actually have to have a native app on your device. And that's really the world that we're trying to inhabit, is building stuff for the web, for the browser specifically, so that any device can access it. I think part of the issue is I feel like we're witnessing the death of the App Store with what the European Union is doing with trying to regulate that environment and try to force companies like Apple to open up their device ecosystem to other app stores or to non-iOS app stores, that kind of thing. And so when we're talking about how are we going to get this stuff to people, we're trying to use the web as our medium, as our avenue to get whatever it is that we're building into the hands of the user. At the end of the day, virtual reality headsets all ship with a browser, so you can go to any website in your browser, in your browser window. And in VR, you put the headset on and you get this sort of like virtual screen, and it's 2D in the 3D world, which is a little weird. But you can go to any website, and then if that website, this is sort of the advantage that we have, is if that website has the ability to recognize that you're in a headset, in an XR-enabled device, then it gives you a button. And it's like, oh, do you want to enter virtual reality? Do you want to enter this simulated space? And you just click the button and off you go. It's pretty amazing. So I honestly feel like building for the App Store is a model that we're going to see start to decline. There's already companies that we're seeing that are shutting their mobile applications down because their web application works great. And they're like, why do we need both? Let's just do the web application thing, and if people want to use it, they just go to our website. At the end of the day, there's so much conversation around the metaverse. Like, what is that metaverse? And people are talking about building their own metaverses. And I feel like that's kind of silly because we already have a metaverse. It's called the internet. We just build things for the internet that are flat. And so now we're seeing that we have the capability to build things that are no longer flat, that are on the internet. To me, the internet is the metaverse. So building for the App Store doesn't really feel like a sustainable future thinking, forward thinking model. But that's a great question. Thank you. Hi.
So I understood from your presentation that the problem you were trying to solve was that the current VR headset space is limited. One thing I was curious about is who you feel like your primary user types are and the problems they have. I heard you mention lots of different possibilities, like designers, maybe companies themselves that are trying to open an online store, etc. Not exactly sure what problems they have or pains they have they could go into for, but is this something you've thought through yet?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something that we spend a lot of time obsessing over that. Who's our user? Who's our ideal customer? This guy's laughing because he's one of my local mentors, and we talk a lot about that. How are you going to get to that customer? What is their pain? What is the solution? And at the end of the day, we feel like what we're talking about makes building spatial content easier. So easier, faster, cheaper, all the things. The benefits of building faster and cheaper for the customer that's thinking about the immersive medium. They're like, wow, it would be so cool if our website worked on the Apple Vision Pro headset the day it launches. And at this point, for a company that's trying to think ahead like that, if they started building for that product launch next year, right now, they would be at least a year late. And so our process makes it possible to build, develop, and deploy in a fraction of the time. So our advantage is that we hope that the customers and the clients that we're talking to recognize that advantage, and they're like, hey, we want to be ready for the headset when it launches, and we want it to work out of the box on the web. And they come to us and they say, hey, you guys can do that, right? We've got 6 months, let's start building. And we'll say, great, we'll be done in 4.
Hey, Shane, thanks for this.
Sure.
This reminds me a bit of when I was a young lawyer in the Silicon Valley and talking to my CEO and saying, what's this internet thing? There's gophers and do you think it's going to be around to stay? This feels like kind of a no-brainer, and you guys are on the leading edge of it, so fantastic. My curiosity is the bio for this talk was talking about a triple bottom line model.
Yes.
I'm curious about that.
Sure, thanks for bringing that up. I'm actually curious what happened in the room when you brought that up. Were people like, no, it's probably just a fad? What did they say?
We thought it was a fad.
Yes.
I thought it was just for the geeks, engineers.
That's great. Well, I appreciate that. We like to think that we're thinking ahead. So to hear that is really great. Thank you. So the triple bottom line model is something that's near and dear to my heart, and that's something that I feel like is really important to build a successful business in today's economy. You cannot just be singularly focused on profit. At the end of the day, shareholder value is no longer the only thing that's important. That's important to me. That's important to the mission that I'm trying to adhere to. That's important to the culture that I'm trying to build in my organization so that it attracts people who understand the value of people, planet, and profit. At the end of the day, in my mind, profit is very much third on that list. My hope is to obviously build a sustainable business model and to build a business that can grow, and also to be good stewards of the social impact of the work that we're doing. Are the people that are working for us, are they enjoying themselves? And is the work that we're doing having a negative impact on the climate? And if so, we have to not do that. So triple bottom line is something that's more from my background in organizational leadership. I was a big fan of Ed Deming, studied him extensively in school. Systems theory and the willing worker, all of that stuff, those are really important. And my biggest takeaway was how much emphasis, especially later in life, ironically my professor actually was wheeling Deming up on stage in his wheelchair to give talks about systems theory and Six Sigma and all these things. And the thing that really landed with me most profoundly was how important it is for people to enjoy what they do. And if they don't, they're never going to be productive. It doesn't matter what kind of motivation you try. If it's like the bonus carrot, or if it's the jerk manager stick, like whatever it is, it's not going to work because people don't enjoy what they're doing. And so if you take away those barriers to enabling someone to have fun while they're working, this is something that Brett and I talk about a lot, trying to bring the concept of fun and play back to work. Work doesn't have to be this burden that we carry because we have to pay the bills, or we've got kids to feed, or all these things. Like, work should be the thing that when you walk through the door, you're like, yes, I am here, and we are doing awesome things. And that's the thing that we're trying to build. So triple bottom line feels like it's kind of the natural extension of that. If people want to be there, they want to be there because what the business is doing is important, and because they have principles and values that align with their own.
Woo! Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. So I was wondering, are you currently taking clients and as a business owner come to you and say, hey, I want a website built. I love what I'm hearing here. What's the conversation that we're going to have? And yeah.
That's great. And yes, we're taking clients currently. So the answer to that, what that process looks like, is we have a sister company that I started back in 2019, Online Training Concepts. My partner Sarah is here, and we feel like there's a very natural connection between these two businesses because of how much emphasis, we do a lot of website development. Companies will come to us because they're like, hey, we need to do some training, or we need some onboarding, or we need to have some client engagement stuff for our business, or their onboarding stuff is like, built in '99, and it looks like it got lost in Windows XP or something, Or we're like, hey, we got a PowerPoint. And we're like, okay, that's not onboarding. That's not what that means. Onboarding can be much more intentionally developed and designed. And I feel the same way about really any project. So we're going to bring this lens of discovery and conversation and building something collaboratively that really fits the needs of what the business is looking for. And in my mind, Online Training Concepts can really help with that process. So we would bring them in to help with discovery and design, and then when it comes to implementation and development, that would be the team at Aktïga. So we could start today. Any other questions?
All right, let's give it a round of applause. Thank you. All right, how many people, Is this your first 1 million cups that you've been to? Let's give them a round of applause. We've had and thank you all for the people that come weekly or come frequently. We love seeing you every week, so thank you for all of your support. We've had kind of an exciting week. We had Demo Day, Jeff Kaplan. That was a pretty incredible, successful event. It was really cool because it was at a theater this year, so it added extra drama and and coming up, I know that you're opening up. What do you call it? Like on November 6th, you're doing the Venture 15 vote, right?
So close. Right there. Yeah.
Okay, tell me the words.
Applications for the Venture 15, that is the annual rankings of 15 fastest growing startups in the area. Sorry, that's on November 6th, the application's open. It is at least a 2-year-old business, at least 150K in revenue, and you qualify, your score, your ranking is by K, the compound annual growth rate. And so it really advantages younger, fast growing businesses than older, more incumbent type traditional businesses. And then we do a big award show, we rank as an orange peel on December 14th. But if you're not a company, but let's say you're like 1 million cups and you're an ecosystem support organization and you do amazing things for the community, you can win an award too. So you have individual awards for Mentor of the Year, Entrepreneur of the Year, Investor of the Year, Ecosystem Support Organization of the Year. So on November 6th, both these things open, nominations as well as applications. So individual and company awards. And a big, huge party December 14th at the Orange Peel.
It was a great time last year. All right, I want to give a shout out to all of our sponsors, and if you are in the room, please raise your hand. We have Charlie and Troy Ball, who generously donate the space each week. Hatch Co-working, that's Sean. Hi. Score, we got Mike Truman back there. The Hatch Foundation, yeah, keep it going like there. Eli the Computer Guy, woo, all the cookies. Andy Lewis with EXP Realty. Venture Asheville, Edward Jones, WNC Business, Mountain Biz Works, Big C, Dynamite Coffee, Roasting, Viking Warriors, and Coffee. If you have a mug, please return it right outside the door. Do not walk to co-working. Do not walk to your office. Do not walk out the door with it because we're going to wash it and bring it back for next week. Exciting times here at the Hatch Innovation Hub. We have UNCA, the Entrepreneurship Lab, will be moving into the back space over there. I think it's January. Is that right, Brian Hickey?
I'm not sure of the dates.
We don't know the dates, but these are exciting times, and the space is now prepped and ready, carpeted, lit. It's gorgeous. So next week we have the entrepreneurship students. They'll be here presenting. I think there's probably going to be like 8 to 15. And also tomorrow. So UNC Chapel Hill with the Echelon?
The Eshelman School of Pharmacy.
The Echelon School of Pharmacy and Mayhack
have a venture studio.
Have a venture studio that's opening here called Goldie.
The startup they created is called Goldie.
There's a lot of words in this one, I gotta tell you.
Tomorrow here at 9:30, they're going to be sharing their process, what they built, and how you can be involved. It is a startup addressing the opioid epidemic.
Yeah, and big grant money. So if you know anybody that works in the it's going to be right here in the event space at 9:30 and catered by Giddy Chick. So come for breakfast. And then also tomorrow night, when you wish upon a Star Jazz tribute is happening at the Wortham Center. The AIGA Design Weekend kickoff is, well, the whole weekend is this weekend. So these are all of the events happening this weekend. And the Association of Fundraising Professionals is doing their awards luncheon at the Renaissance Hotel. And the Symphony is doing their Masterworks 3 presentation, American Portraits, at the First Baptist Church on the 18th. Two things. And if you haven't been to the Symphony at the church, the sound is like incredible. Like it'll either make you cry or fall into like the most beautiful sleep for just a couple minutes.
The AFP luncheon, all the who's who of the nonprofit and fundraising sector will be there, so it's a great chance to network with people that if you're in that space or if you're in need of fundraising, it's a great place to be. So. Also, no 1 million cups on Wednesday.
Yeah, we're all gonna turkey it out. Thank you so much for coming. We will see you next week for the UMCA Entrepreneurship Student Presentations.